You have never touched anything in your entire life. Not your phone, not this floor, not your coffee cup, not the person you love most in the world. Never, not one single time. Right now you think you're touching a screen, or sitting on a couch, or holding something warm. You are not. I promise you, you are not. You are hovering a hair above all of it, held up by an invisible force, and your brain has been quietly lying to you about it. Every second since the day you were born. It's not a metaphor. It's not a technicality. It is the literal, physical truth of what is happening between you and everything you have ever felt. Stick around, because this one ends with the saddest handshake in all of physics. Start with what you are actually made of. Atoms. Trillions upon trillions of them. And here's the first uncomfortable fact. Atoms are almost entirely nothing. Picture a single atom blown up to the size of a football stadium. The nucleus, the heavy core, all the real stuff, would be one tiny marble sitting on the center spot of the pitch. One marble, in an entire stadium. And everything else, every seat, every row, all the air all the way up to the nosebleed section, is just empty space. Nothing there. Nothing at all. And that, unfortunately, is you. You are 99.999, and you can keep saying 9 for a while. Percent empty space, draped around a few flecks of matter that take up almost no room whatsoever. Here's the number that breaks people. If you squeezed all the actual solid stuff out of every single human on Earth and threw away all the empty space, the entire human race, all 8 billion of us, would fit inside a single sugar cube. So the solid, dependable you, reading this, feeling very much like a real object, mostly a rumor, mostly nothing, in a person costume.
Bruh.
So here's the obvious question. If you are almost entirely empty space, and your chair is almost entirely empty space, why don't you just drop straight through it, like two clouds passing through each other? Two lots of mostly nothing should just merge, right? Great question. And the answer is the whole episode. Round the outside of every atom sits a haze, a blur, of electrons, and every electron carries a negative electric charge. And there is one rule that quietly runs your entire physical life. Like charges repel, same charges push apart. Hard. Two negatives get near each other, and they shove, with real force. So watch what happens when your hand comes down onto a table. The electrons on the surface of your skin, and the electrons on the surface of the table rush toward each other. Feel that negative on negative drag, and violently repel before they ever touch. Your hand does not land on the table. Your hand gets caught, in mid-air, by a force field, an unthinkably tiny distance above the surface, and held there, suspended. Every single thing you have ever felt in your whole life was that push. Not contact. Never contact. The push. Now let that reframe your entire day. You are not sitting in your chair. You are floating in it. Levitating a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of the width of a hair above the seat, on a cushion of pure electromagnetic repulsion, and casually calling it sitting down. Your feet do not touch the floor. Your back does not touch the chair. Your phone does not touch your fingers. There is always a gap, a microscopic no man's land, that nothing you are made of is ever, under any circumstances, allowed to cross. When you lean against a wall, you're hovering. When you walk, you are not stepping on the ground. You are bouncing along the top of a force field, millimeters of atoms above the actual planet. When you lie down in bed tonight, you will float just above the sheets, which are floating just above the mattress. The whole world is levitating, a tiny bit above itself, every object hovering over every other object, the entire time, very confidently pretending to be solid. So then, what on earth is touch? That warm, obvious, completely undeniable feeling of your fingers pressing down on a table? It is a story your brain tells you to make a force feel like a fact. Here is what is actually going on. The electrons in your fingertip get shoved back by the electrons in the table. That shove squeezes the atoms in your skin just slightly out of place. Tiny nerve endings in your finger notice that squeeze and fire off an electrical signal to your brain. And your brain, doing the thing it always does, takes that dry little electrical report and paints it into a rich, physical feeling. Smooth, solid, warm, real, contact. But there was no contact. There was a force and a squeeze, and a signal and a story. Touch is not to things meeting. Touch is to things flatly refusing to meet. And your brain scribbling a warm little caption over the standoff. So it feels like something happened. Everything you call solid is really just a feeling of resistance that your brain has dressed up as substance. Okay, take a breath. Here's the part that gets people. If you have never once touched a table, then you have never touched a person either. Go shake someone's hand. Your electrons and their electrons rush close and then shove violently apart. You feel a firm, warm, human grip. But what physically happened is two force fields meeting in the middle and politely, permanently refusing to let your atoms and their atoms mingle. The handshake is real. The touch is not. And it goes so much deeper than a handshake. Every hug you have ever given, every time you held someone's hand, in a hospital, at a wedding, at the very end, your first kiss, your last goodbye, you got close, achingly, atomically close, a gap so small it barely deserves a number, and then you stopped, held apart, forever, by the exact same force that holds up your chair. You have spent your whole entire life, one impossible hair away, from every single person you have ever loved. And you never, not for one instant, actually close the gap. Now, before you fully spiral, let's be fair to the feeling. The gap is real, but it is absurdly, cartoonishly small, and the force stretched across it is enormous. That electron push is one of the strongest forces you meet in ordinary life. It is the reason steel is hard, and diamond can cut, and floors hold. When you knock on a door, that crisp, solid knock, that sound is trillions of atoms in your knuckle, shoving on trillions of atoms in the wood. Not one of them touching, every one of them pushing, and pushing so hard, you can hear it down the hallway. So the solidity of the world is not fake, exactly. It's just not what you always assumed it was. It was never stuff pressing against stuff. It was always force pressing against force, and it is more than strong enough to carry you through your entire life, without ever once letting you sink through the surface of the earth. And here's the flip side, the part that should genuinely cheer you up. That exact same push, the one that keeps you from ever touching anything, is also the single reason you exist at all. It is why your atoms don't collapse into a speck. It is why your cells hold their shape. It is why a chair stays a chair instead of a puddle, and why your body is a body instead of a smear on the pavement. You are not being kept apart from the world. You are being held together by the very same rule. Every boundary that stops you from melting into the couch is the same boundary that stops you from dissolving into nothing. The gap is not the universe pushing you away from everything. The gap is the universe letting you be a separate thing at all. Without it, there is no you to feel left out. So here is where we land. You have never touched anything, and you never, ever will. Not the ground beneath your feet, not the phone in your hand, not your dog, not your kid, not the person asleep right next to you tonight. You have spent an entire lifetime, one impossible hair away from all of it, and you felt every single second of that gap as warmth and weight and pressure, and holding on for dear life, which, honestly, might be the kindest thing physics has ever done for anybody. It handed you the full feeling of touch, without ever letting anything truly touch, so that you would never, ever come apart. The last video, on why you can never see the present, is the other half of this exact idea, and it is right there. Go watch it next. But here is the question to lie awake with tonight. If you have never actually touched a single thing in your whole life, and it still felt like all of that, then what, exactly, were you feeling the entire time?
Bruh.